Welcome, welcome. Where are we today? But the same place we were a week ago. Gonna be over here doing this walk through the last week of essentially just the daily writings on 7 chakra tiers. Essentially just the daily writings on 7 chakra tiers. If you're not familiar, I just invite you to find us over there as well. I realize that I'm not doing a lot of the same live meditations here right now. I've been doing a lot more preparation to hopefully kind of bring together a greater intention toward the next series of our 7 chakra tiers baseline work. I'm going to turn down the frequency here a bit. I can recognize that it's going to be a little loud, so you do that. And as I bring up my voice, sorry for the inflection there, just let's take note that there's so much kind of going on constantly, right? So we're in perseverance of these things. This is a 528 frequency, but a week ago, we kind of had come into a brighter outlook starting March. However, this week needed to start there's always got to be some sort of expansion, I suppose. I'm noticing there's a lot more words making their way to the pages, and there's just a lot more rapidity. There's just so much on top of each other. It's kind of inspiring. And I'm really grateful that this is all taking place the way that it is. But a week ago, we're talking, I've labeled this now, within the solar plexus. So that is our personal power center. Writing. Here are just a couple of the questions that come to mind today. Someone tells you that what they think of you, do you take it personally? Moreover, is your receptiveness to feedback selective or either positive, constructive, or otherwise, meaning negative? So if you've ever read those books by Don Miguel Ruiz, including the 4 Agreements, you'll know how important this question really is. So, kind of starting off the week with a very frank approach, right? So if I may be candid, is my words. Nearly everyone in the natural universe of Earth favors positive feedback that confirms and supports their currently established beliefs and attitudes, but rarely, if at all, are receptive to constructive feedback. Few exceptions exist wherein the giver of feedback is well received. They typically have some reputable quality, though, or an intimate closeness to us. But above all else, there is a mutual respect. At most relational levels, though, it is much more difficult to accept negative or constructive feedback from others, those that we don't necessarily have some closeness to. So when we become receptive, though, to another's opinion, it shows that we are developing a trust, and that respectively creates an amazing opportunity to blossom into a wonderful friendship. So do not forget this, though. Going along just to get along, or speaking at the lowest levels of consciousness, is meaning only of the observable universe, only from our eyes, physical eyes, in the forms of gossip and opinions, frankly, has little to no value whatsoever. The result is a large group of dumbfounded individuals collectively sharing a near exact reality as the next, spewing the same nonsensical and impersonal rhetoric as the next. But what do I know? I write that to ask this. Are you not divine, truly? The only person you need listen to most intensely is yourself. Check your inner dialogue, and if there are negative tendencies, bring an imperative intention of affirmation to yourself. And we start the week by setting the intention, of positive affirmations to positive affirmations. Stay bright. So the overarching theme here going forward is in a brighter outlook, like the last week kind of brought us through out of February into March. Now, second week of March, we want to have a positive self-talk, personal power, build within ourselves that which matters most, our own opinion of ourselves. From here, I went back to the root, right? We define this as the root chakra. And I write, for whatever reason, these just kind of pop out as memes, and I just kind of take my time to dive through them and edit them throughout the day. We must be patient and considerate in regard to anything new that is budding, like this, right? This is my new adventure to quantify my writing in the framework of meditation and with intentions. So like the budding of any new branch on an established tree, it is not always the right place or time. So if we witness it sprout, though, and wish it for it to survive and anticipate its value, sometimes certain measures must be taken swiftly and decisively. There may be a necessary pruning of more established branches that have become overgrown and outstretched. Take note here of branches that are bearing less fruit than before, and where the fruit is perhaps even out of reach, spoiling itself, right? To allow more light in to grow the lower canopy and permit more fruit to be expected in future seasons, we must cut it back, sometimes considerably, allowing more sustenance to be absorbed at the lower levels, right? When we cut things off the top, there's kind of more energy, more nutrient that are able to be absorbed at lower levels. Not all new sprouts, though, are intended to survive the test of time or by nature. But especially without our attention and absolute willingness to nurture and care for it, we condemn it to death. Sorry, my screen went dark. Let me reset that. Such is the nature of electronics. So cultivate space complete with the appropriate conditions, including proper nutrient and adequate sunlight. Caring may sometimes result in simple observation and failure. Can you believe that? Failure? In time, though, we will learn what steps are necessary in any endeavor. So in essence, we always long for something greater, more gratifying, hoping for an even more intense resonance. And perhaps this is as it should be, but the process of becoming the next version of ourselves will typically require a time of adaptation to new conditions that we must cultivate now, succinctly. We must also anticipate and consider which conditions will inevitably change as the season progresses. In order to create optimal possibility of abundance and plenty, remain patient but proactive to branching out. I'll be a little bit more succinct with these deliveries, not giving so much on the side, but let's move on. Day 3. Back to the solar plexus, power center. I recognize what needs to get done. I've grounded myself. Now, there's always a conflict, it seems, in the gut, in what I can or cannot do in this world. So let's get right-sized. As powerful as these words, right, this expression coming out of me, I'm typing them up or choosing to speak or to myself in the form of these affirmations and intentions, it is important to remember that they do not have anywhere near the same impact as I may hope or intend on others, right? Just because I see people look at them or like them or love them, like, are they really absorbing this quantitatively, like fully? This format, is this really the best practice and approach? Well, no matter what, this is perhaps why we so often hear actions speak louder than words. You know, put a whole bunch of words on this screen. Doesn't mean anybody's going to read them. But let me just take this into account. So do I speak, or do we speak immediately from a short-sighted, reactionary, and almost pre-programmed or defensive place? What habits in action can I recognize, or we recognize, that directly contradict the messages we carry and wish to carry? So how often do we fall into the delusion that apologizing by simply saying sorry, in whatever inflection you use, right? Sorry, is anywhere near satisfactory? This is perhaps one of the most antiquated or out-of-date ideas of our time. So every spoken word that does not genuinely match in consistent action showcases a lack of awareness and humility. Right? So just because I say something, if my actions are not in line with that word or that expression, it's going to fall short no matter what, every single time. So today, let's see. I encourage us to thoroughly consider behaviors and action and how they contradict many of the words that we falsely believe should have an impact on another person's life. Take note of the promises that we've made to another, as well as how we most prominently fall short of living up to any commitments that we make. The promises and commitments, right? Perhaps the most gracious way to communicate and draw nearer to another is by first becoming more aware of where our words and actions do not match, and second, by saying less and doing more to action, right? So we're just going to get into the flow of this week, I guess, and came across the sacred contracts that I brought about from Caroline Mees, and she got introduced in one of the chats. And then I found Dr. Caroline Leaf, your purpose is not the thing you do, is the thing that happens in others when you do what you do. And I honestly had kind of a difficulty writing throughout certain days this week, so my intuition was lacking, and out of nowhere, this was a very different approach to writing, and actually on this one I had some difficulty, I recall, and as opposed to like being so much on the philosophical end of things, the succinct thing, I just kind of started writing a situational scenario. So from our third eye chakra to incite some sort of intuition and awareness, this ends up coming out for whatever reason from wherever I do not know. But our third eye chakra does align with our gut instinct, so there's a correlation between that solar plexus work and this third eye intuition. So it goes like this: with so many supposed skills and talents within us, what if none of them were our purpose at all? What if they were merely self-serving? So how many of us would be willing and able to recognize an opportunity to serve another in a most precarious moment? As underneath a layer of insulation, I lay awake, but unwilling to stir. The morning is cold and the room is dark. The first light is still hours away. So there seems to be no purpose to touch my bare feet to the cold floor and rise. My mental chatter is nonsensical and conditions are hardly ideal. Yet, still I wake, I put on my slippers and robe and proceed to the kitchen to boil hot water. For some reason, I fill the kettle more than usual, turn the stove on, and jump in the shower. I don't usually play music, but my lower vibration could use some levity. So I reluctantly select a motivational playlist and turn it up, as I think to myself, whatever comes, so be it. So the warm water is refreshing. The music gets me to begin moving. I even bob my head to the beat. There's a noticeable bounce in my knees. Nearing the end of my shower, the kettle begins to whistle, and almost simultaneously there is a knock at the door. So I take my time exiting the shower to avoid slipping, proceed to remove the kettle from the stove, and approach the door as I think to myself, who could be knocking at this early hour? So to conclude here, sometimes purpose is an unexpected moment. not those skills, talents, all the things we do every single day that are more or less self-serving, not necessarily serving others, just like keeping life light. Perhaps it is when this stranger appears, we may realize that our actual purpose arrives at an extremely random early morning hour, of all places, at our front door, to another, right? The aspect of sharing, the intuitive nature of this day is like all the things when I don't feel like doing something and I just show up and do the next thing that I need to do no matter what. Have that integrity, just no matter if it's sun's not up. If I'm awake, I'm awake. I don't need to escape back into bed. That is this third eye. This is the awakening. This is the intuition. When I do the things that I'm comfortable sometimes, like that's when the biggest blessings can come into our life. So we move on, quite a bit of content going out this week, but back to more of the sacral chakra here, which is that creative space just above our root and before our solar plexus. This is a creative space. And this one's kind of obtuse as well, which I don't understand where all these come from, but this is where it goes, the sacral chakra. Kind of complicated to start, so just bear with me. Pranayama, which is a breathing technique, is made up of practical breathing that instill an expansion of consciousness and permit the body to relieve tension and stress. It is translated as expansive life force energy, among many other interpretations, I suppose. Nonetheless, the 5 pranayama modes, and you can read those if you'd like, are each unique in their own applications and purposes. The distinction, though, I wish to make today, though, is not specifically about pranayama, but rather to perhaps make clear something that may be absolutely obvious. Hopefully it is obvious here. If the air you breathe is toxic, it will never matter how you take that breath. Whatever type of breath that you want to take, if the air that you're breathing is toxic, it's intended to kill you. So let's be aware of the messages and frequencies that we so often subject ourselves to. A great message for many may also be ill-intended and spurned on by some silent bystander amongst the crowd who is just being destroyed in plain sight. As where this came from this morning, that's how I felt. I felt as though somebody who was talking in the most calm manner was absolutely digging and motivated with every word that came out of his mouth. Satisfied the masses, but intended to destroy me. And the only thing I could do this day was right. Like, I was angry. So this was the searching circumstance. Circumstantial disagreements gone rogue over time and without the opportunity for direct communication make for ill-intended messages, which permeate the space and breed further toxicity. This malice as an external application means destruction for those not built to withstand it. Luckily for me, I'm built to withstand it. I'm sure he knows that too, but still, no freaking excuse. I was disgusted, and I'm continually disgusted by certain ways in which other people toxify the air of a positive space in the most discreet ways sometimes. So no matter how beautiful the presentation is, the calmness of tone, the applause and validation, or even the seeming humility on the surface, there's often a seated catalyst. A message derived of lower vibrational energy, if intended to crack or break another, is self-serving and not beneficial, especially to that catalyst. So the bad motive buried behind a good motive is still one of toxicity and is of one accord to destroy. It's this external force. But luckily, you do not have the power to break me. So I just brought my attention this day to not become broken by the illness of another. Rather become self-evident and self-sufficient, but never self-serving. Break down and break through, sure, but only from that which is innate and within me, as I became born of the breath of life, like pranayama, That is true prana. The breath of life, the expansion of life force energy, pranayama, that breath to breaking open. It's actually quite a profound idea here, like if an egg is broken by outside force, life ends. However, if it's broken by the inside force, inside to out, life begins. And great things always begin from inside us. Stay bright. Be that light bursting through your shell. Quite a bit of more content throughout this week, so if you missed anything, definitely go back and review. There's just definitely a lot to uncover. I'm not going to do so much more beyond the writings in these videos weekly, but I appreciate you taking the time. It's now I'm in the sacral and throat chakra, this correlation between the two, where the creativity that's in my loins also becomes an outward expression. In the form of instincts, right? In the form of these words. I really liked this one. I hope it lands well for you, and I hope you can understand the message here. But how often must I recognize that some of my instincts today, they draw me into direct and indirect collision with others, sometimes even to the capacity of actual harm. By harm, we'll not limit this to physical harm, but also be inclusive of mental, emotional, and even spiritual harm. So today let us ascertain, though, that these colliding instincts are indicative of a misalignment and deviation from what we are actually intended to become in our time. That they may in fact be nothing more than learned habits and can more aptly be defined as, quote, defense mechanisms of a most egoic nature. They merely retain circumstances that we actually find ourselves trapped within, which prevent us from adapting to the changes in the wind and the resources of the soil. Okay, so here, let's get into it. Today, we might become similar to a weed. What? A weed? Why are we talking about weeds? Well, because weeds continue to expand their survival instincts through centuries of weather, the coming and going of many storms. The weed has persisted by acclimation to the changing seasons and harsh environments, but typically by these two most basic and dominant resources: its root and its seed. So indeed, the most natural characteristic of a weed is an excessive punctuation of itself, typically in the capacity of an overabundant structure by root, right? It just digs itself into the earth, regardless of what else is in it. And in another most creative endeavor, its capacity to reproduce by seed, right? The outward expression above. So there's two forces, that root structure, and then this creativity expressed in the form of its seed. That's why we can recognize that the most powerful weed is the one grounded so deeply that it stands out amongst a sea of its own kind. It is taller and at the center because it has been reproducing itself abundantly for a long while. The field it is found within has soil that is fertile and an abundance of light. So like a weed, we can become capable of growing deeply and spreading our seeds abundantly. Ultimately, of our own truth and our own essence, we are resonating silently in a field of our own discovery. And with the storms of life, we too will need to acclimate to the changes that befall us over time. As nothing is promised to stay the same, in fact, nearly all things will inevitably transform. We must be willing to not only alter ourselves, but also adapt our seed in the form of our outgoing message. To be possibly transient, meaning temporary, a different type of approach, but ultimately to become transformative in the field of its own discovery. So to adaptation. And this is where like this whole thing comes down to this week for whatever reason, these adaptations and discoveries. Like nothing's going to be the same this week into the next, no matter what. There's going to be some disruption like there was the day before. The person trying to permeate the space with toxic vibe and set himself upon a pedestal of his own making. But it's not for me to hinder what he has going for himself, but rather just to translate it in the best capacity I can, which brings me to today. We're finishing the week with our heart chakra, the center of it all, the whole encompassed week. And this is because, well, I did a 40-minute guided meditation, went back to the root, been feeling like no matter what is happening on the day in, day out, like positivity occurring, and I'm very grateful today. So in the framework of a meditation, perhaps, the heart chakra, I wrote, to be bored or uninspired, soft-spoken, feeling as though there's little left to give, being spread far too thin with duties and responsibilities, having a subtle but apparent malicious intent even in the depths of the heart, a bitterness, a restlessness, like you're waiting for something specific or perhaps not. Consider these things, though, and ask yourself, who is responsible? Today, concluding the week of intentions, I bring my attention to the fulfillment of my life experientially, as I must recognize that I have only one responsibility, truthfully, and that is to live within this heart chakra, to live by love. So here we go. Close my eyes to the world as I see it. I begin my journey and I think. In seeking external resources such as validation, attention, money, specific conversations, and many more, we are misguided and disillusioned by the expectation that this world will fill us up. Furthermore, expelling every ounce of energy to exhaustion, especially within the mind, we devalue ourselves. Finally, becoming stagnant is impossible in actuality. Yet, we often think and feel as if it is our state of being. Then this emerges through my gut with an uncomfortable churning just below the heart in that gut. You are not standing still ever. You are divinely inspiring. You have a voice that you must be heard. Your heart can and will reopen. There's nothing to wait for. Become aware of right now. Become focused on what does matter. I alone am responsible for how I choose to live this life, and subsequently, and only when I embrace this truth, and with love in my heart, the grand adventure of life appears. So let us reopen our eyes. Here and now, with open hearts, acknowledge the wondrous spaces that are now apparent, never yielding, not accepting stagnation or stillness. Forevermore, we stay in motion to adventure. Stay bright. And that really does ultimately conclude the week of these intentions being set. And cut about 10 minutes off of what they've averaged. So that's progress. I hope that you enjoy the review, and wish you another blessed week moving forward. my week really begins tomorrow, Wednesday morning, and I do have some plans in the upcoming week, so I will probably miss 1 week of doing this, perhaps. I'm not sure yet, but whatever happens, happens. And I genuinely appreciate those that have been providing so much feedback and coming into the sphere and joining the meditation on Monday nights and just kind of getting to know this community a bit more intimately. And really, it's nice to know that people are actually finding me on this avenue, even from YouTube to Facebook and into my daily life. That's occurred now. I'm very grateful to recognize that this adventure, it's only because, what's happening today is only because I've been able to be disruptive of my pattern. Not just of my attitude, that's the start, right? The way that I perceive the world, my attitude toward things. But now how it's actually become a part of my outward behaviors. And that's the real gift. Not keeping it to myself, but allowing myself just to give it away. So, again, we come to the conclusion here, and this week worth of intentions, and really, it's so obvious when we go for a full 7 days back and log through it all, that nothing is actually stagnant. I'm never standing still, even in a meditative place. Like, not avoiding life. I'm just simply looking for guidance. I'm looking for a space of a deeper understanding and awareness of life on life's terms, of what's actually happening, and not this defensive nature, not this I need to be able to move beyond those expressions, not listening to the words of other people, but really cultivating who I know that I can actually be, who I'm intended to be, divinely inspiring and divinely inspired. But the idea of stagnation and stillness is appalling. So let's let go of that this week and adapt into another week of abundance and plenty and beautiful possibilities, and never yield. Opening our hearts to new possibilities. Blessings be to you this week. Peace be with you, and